I welcome you to another online reading session. Today I'm going to continue talking about rules. And today I'm going to read another chapter from the book The Story of Football. I remind you this book was written by Lloyd Jones, illustrated by Paddy and published by Osborne Young Reading. Today we're going to read a chapter called We Need Some Rules. In the 19th century, smaller teams of boys began to play football in schools throughout Britain. Teachers hoped the game would teach them strength, courage, and how to work as a team. Football now moved from the streets to special school playing fields, known as pitches. Each pitch had goal mouths at either end for the teams to score. There were still no set rules though. Each school simply made up their own. Some allowed players to trip each other up. Some allowed them to kick each other in the shins. And others even let them pick the ball up and run with it. So some of the rules were no kicking, no punching, no stamping, no tripping, the rules we have today. But at that time, rules weren't existent. As long as they all used different rules, schools could play each other. So in 1863, students from several schools and universities in England met to decide exactly how the game should be played. Most importantly, they decided that players were not allowed either to handle the ball or trip each other. The group named themselves the Football Association, the FA, and their new sport became known as soccer. As we know, soccer is another name for football. In some places we call it soccer, and some places we call it football. Soon it was being played on parks and pitches across England. And here we have some of the rules: no kicking, no punching, no stamping, no tripping, and someone said biting. Can we bite? Obviously we can't. At last soccer had rules, but it was a very strange game to watch. Players wore thick socks, heavy cotton shirts, and even hats. For extra grip, they screwed sharp studs into the bottom of their boots and quickly started wearing thick wooden shin pads outside their socks. Early soccer pitches were unusual too. Some had ponds in the middle, which were covered over before each game. A team from Newcastle had the oddest pitch of all. It sloped from one end to the other. An interesting fact is that Newcastle, the stadium, the pitch is a bit tilted, like the one we have. It's not that tilted, but it is. I've been there and I've seen that it is quite tilted as well, like in the picture. Not as much as in the picture. As teams now of 11 men played more games, they began to organize themselves into set positions. Goalkeepers guarded the goals where opposition players tried to score. Then we had defenders, midfielders, wingers, and strikers. Okay, the first matches played were all friendly games. Then in 1871, the Football Association created a knockout tournament named the FA Cup. 15 teams played in the first competition, which was won by the Wanderers from London. The Wanderers were lucky to reach the final. Their semi-final opponents only dropped out because they couldn't afford the train fare to the match. One of the biggest changes to soccer took place in 1880. The FA decided to introduce referees to make sure there was no foul play during matches. Referees had to stand out from the players, so they wore fancy dinner suits. At first, they simply waved a handkerchief if they spotted a foul. It wasn't until 1970 that referees were given special cards to punish misbehaving players. A yellow card was a warning, and red meant the player was sent off the pitch. And that was the chapter about rules, how rules were introduced. Now let's move on to the questions. Now the first question is common to the session we had last week as well. I have asked you the same question, and today I'm going to ask you this question again. What was allowed before the introduction of proper rules? Mention 2 things, okay? And today we mentioned more things. We said they used to kick each other, punch, used to stamp, and they used to trip, and even bite each other. How were football kits at the beginning? What was the name of the new association? What did they do for extra grip? How were the first pitches? When was the first FA Cup held? Why did the semi-final opponents drop out? When did the biggest change to soccer take place? And what happened in 1970? So these are some questions which you can answer by sending us an email on our address nla@ireland.edu.mt. Today, I would like you also to make a list of rules for a particular event, for example, of your own. For example, you can think about a sports day, or a talent show, or a talent day, for example, something which can take place in your school environment. Obviously, in ideal circumstances, not under the pandemic situation. And I would like you to write some rules which students have to abide to. And these rules can be rules related to sports, for example, as I said, or other rules which things that they have to do and things that they are not allowed to do. For example, they're not allowed to run in the ground, for example, or they have to wear certain clothing. They have to wear they have to be dressed in a certain way. They can't come to school, for example, to this event wearing, for example, something which is not appropriate for the event. And I would like you to also send us pictures related to this event and write to us on our address, which I remind you is nla@ireland.edu.mt. And that was today's session. Thank you very much for following me. I'll see you another time.